Hello again everybody and welcome back to the channel. A revised version of the Innsbruck Circle to Land tutorial that I did some weeks ago. This time with all of the very latest features of the A320nX mod. Very warm welcome back to frequent flyers of the channel. And those of you who might be new here, then please do consider clicking that subscribe button down below. And if you find the video useful and enjoy it, then give us a little thumbs up as well if you can. If you give this a go, let me know how you get on in the comments as well, and what wind conditions you may or may not have had as well for the day. So, we're on our way towards Innsbruck, and we've got the Orbex Innsbruck scenery, where they've hand-modelled the entire town, city, including the visual reference points for this special lock DME East approach with the circle to land. So we're on our way towards Madeb, which is the transition to the star. The Madeb 1 Bravo arrival, which goes via Elmem and then Rattenberg NDB, published hold there, before making our way into Innsbruck. And before we get a little closer, let's have a quick look at the charts so we can see what to expect in a couple of minutes' time. So on the left hand side of your screen you can see Madeb, and we're coming in from the west, flying into Elmem. And then it's likely we're going to be routed up towards Rattenberg for the procedure, and the reason why is because I'll show you guys the charts on the next page. So as you can see here, the next page, we've got the special lock DME East plates for the arrival with the circle to land procedure, and you can see Madeb's going to bring us in across here, this sort of general direction up towards Rattenberg, and then we're going to be turning in 210 degrees to intercept this offset ILS localizer, and then we'll be flying in through the valley for our approach. And there's a NDB of rum there. We've got the lock DME, we've got the so that's the ILS frequency, and you can see in that box it says lock course offset 4 degrees. So that's some things we need to bear in mind there. And if we scroll down, we can see that at Rattenberg we have to be at 9,500 feet. And then at Advig, where we intercept the localizer, we want to then start a descent down 3.77 degree glide path angle. And we've got various altitude checks here, so at 17 DME 8,700 foot, 14 DME 7,500 foot, and so on and so forth, down to 4.2 DME 3,560. But that is focusing on the approach into the westerly facing runway. Now when we get towards 6.3 DME, we'll be looking to branch off. So if we turn to this page of the charts, we can see that we've got the airport elevation of 1,907 foot, we've got our ILS frequency there of 111.1, and the runway heading, or the localizer heading, of 255 degrees, and we'll be coming in from the right hand side of the charts, following that green arrow in. And you can see here at 4.2 DME from OEV, which is the runway localizer, we need to break off and turn left 230 degrees. And you can see various things, so these T's here that we can see all dotted around, they're all power lines, and power lines dotted off here as well, so pylons. And we've got a church there with the number 1, that's church Axams that we're going to be looking for. So we need to tune the Innsbruck NDB frequency of 420, because that's going to be relevant to what we'll be doing. And when we get to 4.2 and we branch off, we'll be flying towards that NDB, and we can see there we have to be at 3,700 foot. Once we get towards a couple of power lines branching off there, we can see we need to be flying a downwind leg. And then when we reach Church Axams, which we should see thanks to the scenery building it and putting it there, we're going to start a turn on right base, and depending on the conditions we might just need a 15 degree angular bank, but it all depends on the wind of the day. and we'll be starting a descent around about 1,000 foot per minute in for our final approach. So let's go ahead and put all the data in to the aircraft. You can see we're passing Madeb now, 13,000 foot, doing 250 knots at the moment, and we need to tune in for our approach, and we've selected in the flight plan Lowy 26, and we've selected the Lock 26 procedure. There's various different options there for us. We go Lock 26, and we've gone via Rattenberg on the Madeb 1 Bravo Star. And that's given us the ILS frequency already put into the MCDU, 111.0. So that's one thing done for us. What we now also need to do is put in the Innsbruck NDB 420. I'll use ADF2 for that one. And we also had the Rattenberg NDB, because we'll be flying through and past that, which is 303. We'll put that into ADF1. We'll reach that first. And that's pretty much everything we need for the time being. We've gone ahead and input all of our performance data. One thing I do need to mention as well, of course, is our decision heights. So, going back to the charts very quickly, looking at the special circling procedures, if we scroll down, we've got that clue there for church axioms at start of right base, and a couple of instructions there. We've got our MDA, and Airbus A320 and 737s and so on, most likely to be a Category C aircraft. But you can see there after approach 11.2 and 12.20. And we're doing the special lock DME East there, which is approach 11.2 on the plates. We can see at the top of the screen. We want our MDA to be 3,700 foot. So we need to put that in. And Category C aircraft, we need 5,000 meters runway visual range. We can also check that, and we can see that if we're using different approaches like 11.4, we've got different MDAs, so lots of information to take in. But similarly as well, again, that also gives us a RVR of 5,000 meters, 5 kilometers. So our MDA for today is 3,700 foot. And let's put that in. And in it goes. So there's our approach data all complete. And we now don't need to do anything else except for arm approach phase as we get a little closer. And we're reaching LMEM now, so the charts tell us we have to be over LMEM above 13,000 feet. We've already got a local QNH programmed in, and we're going to be heading back towards Rattenberg effectively, so we can go ahead and turn ADF1 on. Annoyingly, the sim doesn't give us a distance, however we can see it plotted on the nav display there. So we'll fly this sort of weird procedure that the sim has put in. Naturally, ATC may give us vectors as well. Let's turn terrain mapping on too. We can start to bring this down a little bit so we can start to see what we're going to be doing. And as we're reaching the mountains, we're going to get thrown around a little bit. And turning at LMEM to head towards Rattenberg for this arrival. There's a hold at LMEM, so if ATC tell us to hold LMEM, then there's a published hold there on the charts. But there's also a hold at Rattenberg as well, so if we have to hold there, then there's a published hold on the charts for that too. In the instances of this as well, with the location of Rattenberg NDB, it may be more appropriate for us to program a Tulsi 3 Alpha arrival instead. So we're coming in from the north, sort of direct south of Munich. That might be more appropriate for this procedure, but you can always enter via MADEB, the MADEB 1 Bravo, and if you're assigned a arrival by ATC, you can quite simply just ask them for vectors. You could ask them for the special lock DME East circle to land procedure if you wanted to. And of course, as long as you're at Rattenberg for this procedure at 9,500 foot, then you could be at this point, for example, you could still be at 18,000 foot, 15,000 foot or so for terrain. So it depends on what ATC give you as well as a direction. We should potentially be able to see Innsbruck down below. So Innsbruck should be down there somewhere. Not that we can see it just yet. If you were flying an RNAV approach, you'd be flying through this valley here, which is a really good one actually. If you're flying the runway we're going to be landing on, 08 I think it is off the top of my head, you'd be flying through this valley, and once you're in this section here, you'd be flying it manually. So you take over manual control and you'll be flying it in, and the runway's just the other side of that peak there, and that's a really good RNAV approach. Into runway 08. If we have to go around as well, what's probably a good idea is for us to put in the missed approach localizer, because we need to fly over that and then head back towards Rattenberg with a really steep climb. So that frequency is 109.7. What we can go ahead and do we can just save it there and just leave it in the scratch pad potentially, and then if we have to go around we just hit insert. You can see Rattenberg just there coming up, and there's our decel point, so that's where the aircraft is going to tell itself to slow down, and by that point as well we should have activated approach phase if it hasn't done it itself already. Just lights as required, and seatbelt signs etc. on too. And once we go into this procedure, we will use track FPA, which is a great addition to the A320nx. Once we get into the descent as well, and we're on the localizer, we're established, we'll be cleared for the circle to land procedure by the tower, and they would probably tell us that we're cleared for unrestricted descent as well. We'd have to read that back as so, and that's basically just allowing us to descend to whatever heading we need to do to make the procedure work basically. Notably though, with the actual procedure, we shouldn't be going below the MDA unless we can see the runway and we can see sort of where we're going to be flying, and that initial branch off we stay at 3,700 foot, and the downwind leg we have to stay at 3,700 foot as well, and only when we reach that church axams we can descend down to the runway. So we remain at 3,700 for the most of the procedure from 4.2 DME. DME stands for decision measuring equipment, and in this instance we're measuring our distance of the aircraft relative to that OEV 111.1 localizer. And notes wise, the charts tell us visual approach after 11.2, which is the one we're using, having established effective external visual reference between 6.3 OEV / 4.4 OEJ and the missed approach point, the flight shall be continued with visual reference either straight into runway 26 or on a right hand circuit to runway 08. So let's start a bit of a descent round to Rattenberg. Of note, if you go to the ILS page, we're tracking an NDB. What we're also tracking is the green line. So the magenta is of course our ILS frequency, and we can see at the top right ILS 1. 111.1, of course 258 degrees, ILS runway 26. So we'll be looking to align the magenta arrow and fly that diamond as well in that vertical guidance. So the magenta arrow on the right needs to be level and central to the yellow line there. Same with the PFD when we are LS mode. And checking the altitude throughout as we go. But as you can see, we've lost the actual flight path for the route now, so we'll leave it in arc mode for the time being. And we can arm ADF2 as well, which is the Innsbruck NDB. And configuring for our landing. Configuring early is going to be really key as well for us. The more we can get done early, the better the procedure will go. And speed is key as well, as always with these sort of things. So if we can get that speed off early enough, then the rest of the procedure, we've got more time to fly it basically, and therefore more time to make decisions. So small runway, we'll use medium auto brake. Want to arm the spoilers. Got just about 12-13 miles to go, so I'll activate approach phase. Get that go around OEJ lock input just in case. Missed approach wise, we have to climb on a max gradient to 0.8 OEV, then turn left onto 060 to Rum, which is an NDB of 320, and then we need to intercept the OEG localizer course at 066 degrees. And proceed outbound back to RTT. We have to climb up to 9,500 foot. So what we'll also need to do, I did forget to do that earlier, we need 320. So Rattenberg, in fairness, you could probably get rid of that NDB track because it's in the flight plan anyway. So let's replace that. And it's picking up Rum now, which is going to be our next one, and we'll go back into manage speed mode. That's going to help slow the aircraft down. coming up to 9,500 now. We know from Rattenberg we need heading at 210 degrees to Advig, which is 21 miles from the airport. And then we have that 3.77 degree glide slope. Once we get near to the green dot, we can deploy flaps 1. Five miles to Rattenberg. And you can see the valley down there, straight up towards Innsbruck. If we're flying an RNAV into 26, we'd be going through the valley. But we're flying this special lock DME East procedure. And we can see Advig coming up as well shortly. So we'll be holding 9,500 foot up to Advig, turning to then intercept the localizer, and at 19 DME we should start our descent. LS mode on, and down the PFD there on the bottom left we can see our distance. That's what we'll be using. Once it gets towards 4.2 we're then breaking off to do that procedure as well that we mentioned a little earlier on. And as a very quick reminder, that's the chart. So we're approaching Advig now, flying that ILS, and then we'll be breaking off to fly that visual approach circuit, remembering we're turning base at Church Axams. So we're making our way to Advig now, and it's pretty much where the peak of this mountain here is. And the more you fly into it, the more you sort of pick up on little details like that. And we can look down into the valley and we can see the approach lights for Innsbruck, runway 26 flashing away in the distance too. And we can see the river that we'll be following in, that we saw on the charts as well. We've got LS mode on, so we're making our way up towards Advig first to intercept the localizer. About 4 miles to go. And we go flaps 1 now. Start to slow the aircraft down for the approach. .80 knots. Let's go on to LS mode. And let's arm lock mode, localizer mode. So that's blue, armed. When it's green, it's active. Winds 088 now at 3-4 knots. And we're turning Advig kind of here. We're starting to work to get onto that localizer. That's captured. We've got a number of altitude checks to make, so once we do hit that localizer and we start to descend through it, we've got to check our altitude as we go. As we're turning as well, let's arm approach phase so we capture that glide slope as well. And we've got 19 miles to go. We know at the 19-mile mark we start our descent at 3.77 degrees. And there goes the nose going down with the glide slope. We can set our MDA as well, 3,700. 17 miles now, so 8,600, 8,700 rather, that's as it is on the charts. Let's go flaps 2. And as we're going through these additional phases of flaps, we're increasing the drag on the airframe as well, so the speed will start to bleed off, even though we've got quite a steep rate of descent, 1,500 foot per minute. 15.3. The next check for our altitude, 7,500 foot at 14 DME. We could turn terrain mode off because it would just get really confusing shortly. Everything will turn out red. 14 miles, bang on 7,500 foot. $12 miles. At 9 miles, we want to be at 5,500 foot, and at that point we will go gear down. The next point for us, we'll be looking at 4.2 miles, and then we turn 230 degrees. It's an awesome approach, really scenic. We've got the Orbeck scenery as well, so it makes it a little nicer. We've got the church in the distance. We can actually see from the charts the road that takes us down south as we break away from this offset localizer, and right in the distance we can start to see that church coming into view as well, that church spire, where we'll be turning base. So coming up to 9 miles. And we're going to go track FPA mode. Gear down. We've come off the ILS now. Still descending. We're looking for 4.2, don't forget. Flaps 3. Three green.
2,500.
.1. Start to turn. 230 knots is our target. 230 degrees track, sorry. And we're now holding level at 3,700 foot. We're looking for the double arrow, ADF2, the Innsbruck ADF, which is that one there. And as that starts to shoot off to the left, that means we're flying past it, and we know as well that there should be some power lines and things down below as well. And we can start to see a couple of power lines in the distance. There's one there, one here as well. So we know we're going to be flying off down that way very shortly and making our turn onto the downwind leg. We can see that ADF, that NDB marker on the nav display switching across as well as we start to fly past it. Maintaining 3,700 foot. Still flaps 3, but we've got gear down. And now it's starting to really shift. Turn onto base leg, downwind leg, sorry. And then we fly a track of 264 degrees. And we're following the power lines up to the church, which we can see right in the distance there, where the cursor is. There's all the power lines down below. And there's Innsbruck Airport. Let's go full flaps.
1,000.
And you can see why we need to hold this 3,700 foot, because currently on our rad out we're at 830. No blue on the ECAM. And landing inhibits on. You can see how close we start to get towards the terrain as well. There's the church. There's the edge of the runway. And we're going to be turning base on as we go past the church, and we're going to want almost sort of a 30-degree angular bank, but almost a 1,000 to 1,200 foot per minute rate of descent down as well for that final turn. 600 foot above the ground, see, so quite an intense arrival. Let's prepare our missed approach altitude. We've got to climb back to 9,500 foot, and we'll take over manual control now. There's the church spire down below. Keeping it straight and level for the time being. And we're pretty much passing the church now, not that we can see it. Perhaps you guys get a better view here. Not really. But we're definitely going past it, so let's come back to our base turn and get the nose down slightly to start our descent in. And all the while we're going to be looking into the turn and looking for that airport as well, looking for the runway.
500.
If you don't turn wide enough, if you don't turn sharply enough rather, then you drift wide. And also factor in as well, bear in mind you might have some other things to contend with, like crosswinds. But use the keybinds to your advantage. So we've got one white. Let's just bring that nose up slightly, slow our rate of descent. So keeping our rate of turn, that's looking okay. Bringing the nose up slightly to kill off that rate of descent. Working to get 2 red, 2 white. Just going to fly level for a second. Start to chill that rate of descent down. Trying to work to get those pappies back slightly, but don't want to fight it too late into the descent. So I'm going to go for a 2.5 degree flight path angle using the birds, but now I'm looking at the runway threshold. Let's get our nose down because we're going to have 2 white. There we go.
300.
Final approach.
200.
Orbex scenery, and quite disappointed with some bad bumps on the runway. That's quite frustrating, if I'm honest. Not quite good enough for payware. And slowing down to exit the runway towards the apron. So let's get rid of those speed brakes or ground spoilers. And bring them flaps up. Lights as required. Let's get the APU fired up as well. And there we go. The circle to land procedure into Innsbruck with the Orbex scenery. Hope you guys found it useful. Give it a go, let me know how you get on in the comments below, especially if you've made it particularly difficult with challenging wind conditions or and so on. And be sure to tune in and join me for a live stream in the very near future. Thank you all for watching.